Welcome to Beyond Referrals, the podcast exploring how trust, growth, and client relationships in financial services are evolving in the digital and AI age. I'm your host, Emily Armstrong. Let's dive in. I'm so excited you're here listening to this episode with Kersey. Before we get into it today, I just want to take a second and tell you why this one is different and really special. So Kersey is a friend, and when you listen to this conversation, you're going to feel that because this isn't just a tactical interview. This one goes deeper, and that's really just because of the kind of person that Kurt is. He has one of the most rare superpowers I've seen and encountered in any other person. And his superpowers are intentionality and presence. When you're with Kurt, you definitely feel it. He's completely there. He's not somewhere else or distracted, just fully present there with you. And in today's world, that is unheard of. And that's an experience that I want to be more like that. We talked about that. So we talked all about a personal brand, reputation, and trust. But honestly, the biggest takeaway for me on this episode was a lot more personal than that. And this conversation left me with conviction. It made me think of ways that I want to slow down, be more present, and stop letting the busyness of life and the anxiety of what's next be my default setting. We talked about what it means to be present with your clients, your family, and how that one decision to put others first changes everything about how people experience you and how you build a business. So I think you're going to feel this one. All right, here is my conversation with Kurt. I am so excited for what you're going to get out of this one. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond Referrals. I have an amazing guest today. I am so thrilled that he decided to be here and share some nuggets with all of us. Can't wait to learn from him today. I have Kersey. And he's someone I'm genuinely excited to have on this show. And I follow him because of what he's built, but also because of how he shows up and who he is in what he's building. So Kersey started his career as a financial advisor in CFP, which you might not know about him looking at him today. He spent 5 years in the industry serving clients, and then from there built a marketing agency, started in a coffee shop, built it to 7 figures. And now he is a coach, a keynote speaker, and a business advisor working with leaders on communication, personal branding, and showing up with clarity, conviction, and creativity. He's worked with sales teams, entrepreneurs, and leaders across industries. His background in financial services gives him a lens that's uniquely relevant to this conversation and this audience. He lives in Cincinnati, Ohio with his wife, Kersey, and his 2 kiddos. And I am just so thrilled to have him here. And he's someone who I've gotten to know a little bit, but he's just one of those people that I always appreciate a conversation with. So Kurt, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for having me, Emily. What an intro. Your
I
listeners
just simply
don't know
stole
it.
it from...
Your listeners don't know it, but you were like, I know you just sent me an intro, 10 minutes before we recorded, but I wrote my own. Yours is way better. So, you're the marketer here on this conversation. I love it.
I love introing people because I just get to brag on them, and my guests are so easy to do that with. It's funny. I had a guest on right before this, and I gave him an intro, and it's like he was like, "I'm blushing." I'm like, literally, that's just what you've accomplished. That's what you've done. I didn't do anything.
I love it. You're too kind.
There is
awesome.
something though about like hearing your work from someone else and having someone else intro you. I think there's something to that.
Well, on somebody else's perspective, right? Like what stands out to you about the work that I do is always helpful to have that mirror held up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to, in the intro, that's like the spark notes, right? But you have a really unique lens for this audience. And we're going to talk all about today about personal branding, trust building from your experience, and take us back to you were a CFP in this industry to founding and leading a marketing agency to what you're doing now. I would like to hear just a little bit about that journey and how did your roots within this industry shape everything about relationships and trust that you are so passionate about today?
Yeah. Wow. Well, anytime I get a chance to talk to a room of advisors or specifically to talk about the wealth management world, it's such a pleasure because obviously it's where I started my career. It's where a lot of my early lessons as a professional, as a leader, as a salesperson were developed. And I'm so grateful for that start. And I'm grateful for it for a lot of reasons, but namely like the two that I think are relevant for this podcast is there may be no other profession where trust and reputation are more important. Like, right? Like when you are dealing with something as sensitive as someone's finances, which are oftentimes, as we know, so interwoven with their families and with their future and with their vision for what they hope might happen one day when we're talking about retirement planning and education planning. Like there's nothing more sensitive to where that trust, that bedrock of trust, that foundation of trust has to be there if you're going to be successful. So I loved getting to start my career in a profession where that was so important. The second reason I love having started my career there was that there like the wealth management world is such a tight knit community. I feel like once you're in the inside, like you already said it, like you already got like several podcasts back to back today because there's just so many great people to talk to. And so many of the folks that are leading the helm of, so much industry shift, even over the last handful of years, are just such great high character people. And so I love the community that came out of the wealth management space. But yeah, I started my career in the wealth management world. Even before that, I spent some time in ministry. I interned every summer with a international orphan care nonprofit called Back to Back Ministries. And that was a really formative experience for me for a lot of reasons, but mainly because it exposed me in hindsight to entrepreneurship. I watched that organization over the years go from, a husband and wife team that felt called to move down to Monterrey, Mexico, and answered that call to what is now a $15 million a year organization. And I got kind of a front row seat to watching them watch. But I also got to experience what it's like to have, it was a short-term missions model. And so every single summer, every week throughout 8 weeks over the summer, we would have 80 Americans come down at a time for just a week-long stay in Monterey. And they would always come down thinking about everything that they were going to give. And they would always leave having gotten so much more out of that experience. And a lot of the reasons they felt that way were because of relationships. And so I carried that really with me into the wealth management world, that everybody has a story and everybody's story matters. And so walking into the wealth management space, I said, I'm a 23-year-old financial advisor. I don't know what you know about 23-year-olds, but they don't make great financial advisors right out of the
Their
gate.
prefrontal cortexes are not fully developed.
That's right, especially as a male, right?
Right, yeah.
And so I had so much to learn, but what I knew was that, well, gosh, I've gotten the opportunity to really learn how to build great relationships. And so while I have a ton to learn in the process of becoming a great financial advisor, I already maybe have a little bit of an edge in my ability to go build relationships and develop deep relationships. And so I'm going to focus on doing that. And so I really got off to a fast start at Northwestern Mutual because I was so committed to just going out and building a relationship. And if there was an opportunity to help somebody, make sure that they got in front of the right advisor in my office where we could really help them and then have the opportunity to learn through that process. So I love that the focus of the career was on relationships.
Yeah. You had said this in a podcast that I was listening yesterday, but like that was starting your career there was such a good training ground for because you can't have one without the other. You have to have sales skills and relationship first focus, I think, to be successful, period, at all. Because if you have one without the other, you're not going to, they just won't work.
Yeah.
You won't be
Yeah.
able to build and attract clients. And it's funny, my conversation right before this was all about the industry shifting from a sales mindset to a service mindset. And
I
I
love
think
that.
that, yeah, that's like what you're doing is helping people to build trust and build relationships there. And I was actually telling you right before we hit record, but I think you're such a powerful example of this. And I just want to
Mm.
brag on you for a second because I had an amazing person reach out to me I didn't know them, like cold outreach to me simply because they saw that you and I were connected on LinkedIn. And I think I commented on one of your posts. And that person reached out to me and we've built our own relationship. And he's a very high quality, amazing person. And I was like, dang, Kersey, that's the power of really what you're about, of relationship building, people first. And it must be so fun. Talk to me about how fun that is for you, just like with right now with what you're doing?
Well, I want to pause a second on that because I think that's such a great example. A lot of the times I'll talk about like, what we got trained on early on at Northwestern was the art and science of sales, right? And there is such a science to good sales, whether it's knowing your language inside and out, knowing what your follow-up process needs to look like, knowing what your sales process looks like, but then doing that in an artful way that doesn't feel transactional, but that really focuses on how do I just help this person as much as possible, right? Like I was a reluctant salesperson in a lot of ways. I didn't want to be in sales until I realized that one, everything is sales, and two, that sales is really very similar to evangelism in a lot of ways. I have an incredible product, I have an incredible solution, and I can't not go tell people about it. Right. But that example from our buddy Nathan is such an awesome example. And he is a textbook example of just being incredible at both the art and the science of sales. Right. So he probably makes it a habit of paying attention to who he's not connected to on LinkedIn that's connected to
True.
people that he likes. Right. So there's a scientific process there to say, okay, I'm going to pay attention to Kurt's post and anybody in the industry that comments on that post that I don't already know, I'm going to send them a message, but he does it in a very artful, authentic
Right.
way to go build a relationship. That guy, speaking of art and science, he sends me like without exception once a quarter, sends me, and we'll talk off and on like in between, but he'll send me his Calendly link and
Yes.
or he'll
He
find my
told me
Calendly link
this.
and he'll book a call. And
Yeah.
the agenda of the call is just to like catch up a little bit, what's going on in his world, what's going on in mine, and a book recommendation and a cigar. And like clockwork,
Oh,
we met like we worked together maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and not a quarter has gone by that Nate has not sent that follow-up, and that is a system, right? There's a science to that,
yes.
but then he shows up on the call just ready to be authentically himself and build into our relationship, and it might sound transactional on the front end to say, "Once a quarter, I'm gonna send that message and stay top of mind," but it feels so relational because of how he does it.
Oh my god, that's such a good example. He did tell me that you guys get together quarterly and he uses Microsoft To Do to like reach out. Again, perfect example of integrating both. How do you, Kurt, just you're in the relationship business, like that's a big thing you're coaching on, that's what you're doing. How do you cuz we're such limited, humans and especially you
Mm,
and I as parents,
yeah.
even more limited. How do you like, I don't know if even the word is how do you decipher who gets, that level of relationship and touch from you? And is it like just natural, like a gut feeling, or like how do you approach that? Who to
Yeah,
build in and
how do
who
you
to
manage
invest
your
in?
your time and capacity, right? I mean, I think
Mhm.
uh, a a a couple things come to mind is like just because we're more focused on building a relationship than we are a transaction doesn't mean that we have to be everybody's best friend, right? Like we have a mutual friend and a guy named Brandon. Brandon and I worked together maybe, gosh, we first got introduced 8 or 9 years ago, maybe. And we got introduced, we put a half-hour discovery call on the calendar, and I think we ended up talking for 2 hours. Like we just hit it off. We became fast
He's the kind
friends.
of guy where that's
Right.
expected. Yeah.
Right, and we're cut from a similar cloth, like, we had so much in common, and that doesn't always happen, but we just clicked, we became friends. I caught him at the right time where what we were doing just made sense for them, and so we had about 2 or 3 years there where we were working together really consistently, and then the relationship kinda ran its course. He was going in one direction, we were going in another. Didn't make sense to keep working together, but we've maintained a friendship, and I say we've maintained a friendship in that we just caught up maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and we realized it had been like 18 months since we had last spoke. But you know this, like with certain people, you just pick up right where you left off. And so because we had been so intentional in the time that we were working together about not just making it a transaction, but truly investing in the relationship together, spending some time to get to know each other, to understand not just what's important in the business, but how that impacts our lives outside of the business, and understanding not just the project that we were working on together, but how that project impacted the overall business and why it was important to Brandon individually and why it was important to other members of his team individually, and not just looking at a scope of work and executing that scope of work, but really making sure we understood the people and the impact behind that scope of work. And I think when you do business that way, you're going to inevitably build a relationship. And listen, I could take more of a cue from guys like Nathan who have better systems. I'm admittedly like
Same here.
systems are not natural to me. I have to
Yeah.
really like learn it and force that out of myself. But relationship and a relationship focus both comes natural, and it's been something that I've invested in developing. But that again, that doesn't mean that everybody's my best friend. I actually have a pretty small circle of guys that I talk to on a daily basis, but that doesn't mean that I can't focus on building a relationship with anybody and everybody that I come in contact with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're similar in that regard. We're like the people we want to work with, or the people we work with, we want to build a relationship with them. Like we like to know about their family. That's just us as human beings, and not everybody is like that in their business. And so let's talk about like your intentionality behind that. And I kind of hate to use the word personal branding because it makes it sound like really I know that that word I don't see it that way, but I don't want other people to see it to hear it that way. But like very intentionally build relationships that way and build business that way. And it does bring you opportunities. Like, years down the road, oh, I still have a connection with that person. And you've talked about this in other podcasts where you just conduct yourself a certain way that's intentional, and trust and opportunity comes from that. How has that stay and I'd love to hear your story too of like your pivot out of what you were doing into what you're doing now, because you've clearly been able to preserve who you are throughout your transitions of what you're doing for work, and you carry the relationships with you. So like what is your approach behind the intentionality of that? Or what's
Yeah.
your mindset?
Well, it's a great question. I think like it goes back to that early foundational experience in ministry where my focus was not on raising support for that organization. My focus was not on extracting any kind of transaction. It was on helping people experience that transformation that's possible in that short period of time while they're there. That was all driven by building great relationships. And I think like that has to so that intentionality that you talk about, like, it has to come from a real place, right?
You
Like,
can't
that's the
fake
thing
it.
about yeah, that's the thing about building trust and building relationships is it has to come from a heart level philosophical decision that the person that I'm with right now is important. And, like, I'm one of those people that, like, you're walking through a grocery store and you see somebody from high school that you haven't seen in years. There's 2 kinds of people. There's somebody that, like,
You
runs the other
run.
direction, put your head down, hope that you don't see them, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's like that would be my wife. She's just more
Yeah.
introverted than me. She wants to focus on what she's doing. She's like, "What do I say to that person?" I'm the person that's, like, flagging them down from across the store going, "Yo, what's your name again? Remind me. How
Yeah.
are you? What's going on with your family?" And not because I'm extremely extroverted. I'm actually way more introverted than I am extroverted, but I've made a decision that my life is about other people. And I think, especially if you're in sales or any kind of service, like professional services industry, your work, at least, if not your life, is about being in service to others. And if we take that seriously, then like a discovery meeting, yes, do we have an agenda that we're trying to get through? Do we have a goal that we're trying to hit? Do we have a sales quota that we might be trying to make? For sure. But the number one priority has to be I want to build a relationship with this person. I want to understand what makes them tick. I want to understand what's important to them. I just know that like that's how I want to live my life. Like you talk about personal branding. I think your personal brand has so much more to do with your reputation than it does with whatever like marketing message we wrap around ourselves, right? And if that
Yes.
marketing message is congruent with our heart and with our actual reputation, then oh my gosh, it just becomes easy and it becomes fun, right? When
Yeah.
we can nail it that way. But I'm just such a big believer that whoever I'm spending time with, I want them to leave that conversation feeling like nothing else was on my mind and nothing else mattered other than that conversation, spending that time with them, whether I got 5 minutes or I got 5 hours.
I'm taking some mental notes right now because I want that too, but I have a long ways to go,
Mm,
especially with parenting. My goodness. Talk about bringing
what
that
do you
approach
mean?
to parenting.
Let's do a little live coaching. Like, what
All
gets in
right.
the way of, tell me more about what you mean by that. What gets in the way of like having that relationship focus for you?
I think my own agenda, to
Yeah.
sum it up.
Yeah.
So, like, and this is true, this could be true for business or for, like, with my husband and my kids. Yesterday's a good example. My 3-year-old and my 9-month-old, they share a room and they nap at the same time, and my 3-year-old's been phasing out of naps, which is like, "Oh, Lord, please, no." I need
I'm
that
with you.
time,
I'm
right?
with you. Yep.
And, like, it's my agenda that when they go down for nap, I will have time to myself and to, like, just kinda chill or work, and I've already planned that time in my head. But then my 3-year-old decides, "Nope, I'm not napping today." He jumps in the crib with my 9-month-old, and then my 9-month-old wakes up after sleeping for 10 minutes, and it's a total mess. Like, they're both awake, they're both screaming. So, yesterday, I noticed a difference because, like, my traditional mindset is like, "Oh my god, they're ruining my afternoon. This is," and I get really kind of anxious about that, and I get mad
Yes.
because my expectations were not met of that time that I had already, like, dreamt up in my head, and my agenda is not being met. Versus yesterday, I was like, "Nope, you know what? Like, some days do look like this, and this is the point. I'm not
Yes.
gonna get that
Beautiful.
time, but, like, George, my 9-month-old baby, needs me to snuggle him back to sleep." And I took an hour to snuggle George, and, like, it just made the time, it didn't feel like they were, like, an obstacle into what my time was meant to be. So I think that's just a practical example, but I wanna live like that for more of my life.
Yeah. That's such a great example though, right? Like, I mean, gosh, parenting and marriage are 2 of the hardest things that we'll ever do. They're
Ever,
hard
and
because they're
entrepreneurship.
and entrepreneurship, but they're hard because they're so relational, right? Like,
Yeah.
the like human dynamics are really difficult. And I think what you did there, like with that reframe of like, hang on, this is the whole point. Like, this is why I started the business to begin with, right? Was to be able to have the flexibility to sit here and snuggle George in the middle of the day and give him what he needs. And I think that reframe is so important. And like, I'm far from perfect at that. Don't hear that from me at all, but I think setting that intention and having some, back to Nathan and systems, having some systematic reminders for ourselves of what our intention is, right? I'm the same way. I worked from an office for the first 15 years of my career. I always said, like, I am not a work from home guy. Like, just does not work for me. Well,
Yeah.
we're in similar seasons of life. I got a almost 4-year-old, he's gonna be 4 in a couple weeks, and a 2.5-year-old, and time is just flying by, right?
Too fast.
The cliche is, like, so
It's
true,
so true.
but it's flying by, and I'm like, "Man, I wanna commit to working from home as much as possible in this season so that I can, like, sneak away for a half hour here and there and get to, or 5 minutes here and there, and get to experience them while they're this age and while they're at home for the most part." And, like, that comes with its frustrations where I have to remind myself and frame it that way of why I'm doing it when, like, I wanna get a second cup of coffee, but I know if I go downstairs right now, it ain't gonna be a 30-second quick trip to get a second cup of coffee. It's
No,
gonna be
sir.
15 minutes because he's gonna want me to look at the drawing that he just did, and my daughter's gonna wrap her arms around my leg and say, "No, daddy, don't go back upstairs," right? And I could either go down, and I do plenty of times, and, like, get frustrated that that 30 seconds just turned into 8 minutes or whatever it is, or I can embrace that, and before I go down the steps, say, "I'm gonna go down and get another cup of coffee, but what is the purpose of me being at home and going and getting that second cup of coffee?" It's so that I can go enjoy those moments with them. And if I got a day like recording this with you, this is not my home studio, right? Like, I needed to be focused for this conversation. I popped over to my buddy's place so that I could limit those distractions. So I think it's just setting that intention, framing that intention, keeping that in mind. So, like, when we walk into those sales conversations, we walk into those discovery meetings, making sure we're asking ourselves, how do I want to show up in this moment? Not just what is the goal from a sales perspective, even though that's still important, but how do I want to show up in this moment? That doesn't mean that those things have to be at odds. In fact, a lot of times they work together, right? Like, if I'm walking into a discovery meeting, the only way I'm going to actually get great information, valuable insight from that person sitting across the table or across the Zoom meeting from me is if I focus first on building a foundation of trust. And if I got 30 minutes and I spend 25 of them on building trust and getting to understand that person and asking good questions and relating to them, and I only get to spend 5 minutes on gathering information or asking good discovery question, that's okay. I can schedule another, like, they're going to give me another 30 minutes to do that discovery if I've spent 25 minutes building trust.
And what are they going to remember about the time with you?
1000%.
Yes. Something that you have modeled really well and actually have inspired me personally is just how you show up online and with your digital presence. And it's something that I really admire about you. You're incredibly human and authentic, and I really get a sense of your leadership and your thinking. And I see that the way that you've been able to do that actually creates this trust and creates community and creates opportunities for you. And so it's like, just to hear me say that, like, you really have inspired me to show up more human for myself. And I see a lot of, the main audience of this show is advisors. I've been thinking about this a lot, where I think a lot of advisors have not really engaged in that much at all. And if they are starting to, like, it's not effective because they're not really being fully open or vulnerable or human or transparent. Like, so on in your journey of like doing this, what has that been like for you?
Mhm. Oh gosh. Well, I think that back to being a 23-year-old financial advisor, right? I can tell that story in hindsight and say I had all this clarity of like, I wasn't that great of a financial advisor at 23. And so I focused on building relationship. The truth is, I wanted to put forth an image that was, I know how to give great financial advice. The reality is at 23, I really didn't, right? I got great foundational training from NM. I was working on my CFP in those early years. And so I was learning a lot. I knew more than most, maybe, which is a huge asset, but I wasn't there yet. And in fact, the best thing that I could have done, and once I figured this out, like that's when the career really took off, was I don't have to prove anything. Right. I got introduced to a book really early on called The Trusted Advisor. And in that book, they talk about trust is a function of credibility, liability, and intimacy. And the reality is at 23, 24 years old, I didn't have a whole lot of credibility, right? And there wasn't a ton that I could do right in that moment to solve that. Getting my CFP and educating myself and getting reps was a path to gaining more credibility, but that wasn't an overnight path, right? So credibility was really hard to build. Reliability, okay, I could do what I said I was going to do. I could follow through. I could get to meetings on time. I could send reminders. I could send follow-up message. I could prove myself reliable. The one thing I could do probably more and different than others was build it. Intimacy is kind of a weird word. Like vulnerability is the more accepted version of that word now in the workplace. But even then, like vulnerability was kind of a weird thing to bring into the workplace. But like building intimacy is a muscle, right? And so I think about like confident vulnerability. There's something really magnetic about being confidently vulnerable. And the reality is vulnerability doesn't mean I have to share my deepest, darkest fears or like my wounds with everybody that I
Like,
meet.
that's not cute. That
No,
doesn't,
right. Like,
yeah.
and there's a reality where like that's not appropriate or even healthy, right? Like oversharing is a real thing. But like I can do little things like when somebody says, "Hey, how's it going?" and we're sitting down to coffee and we got an hour together, I can say, "I'm doing all right. It's been a little bit of a hard week to be real honest." And like even if we don't dig into it past that, I just opened a little bit of a door to say, "Hey, do you want to have a real relationship or do you want to keep it surface level?" Right? And I've let that person know that like it's okay if like you're having a tough week too. Like we can just be real about that and we can still get work done and we can still focus on whatever the purpose of getting together is, but we can also show up and be real. And so I think there's little things like that that we can do to just embrace almost a presence of vulnerability and be the one to go first, right? And that's a muscle that you can build over time. But that served me really well just to like as a way to let people know that like I'm a safe place if you just want to be real about like, frankly, I'm exhausted. It's been a really hard week. Like, cool. That happens to the
Same.
best of us, right? Like that's
Yeah.
totally fine.
Yeah, you do it very well. I think you do it very well. How have you seen that that's grown your business and given you opportunities?
Yeah. Well, I think like the flip side of that is I might say, "Hey, I'm exhausted and it's been a really hard week." And you're still going to get my best effort, right? Like we're going to pivot from that conversation. If we got a packed agenda, I'm going to show up and I'm going to bring energy and we're going to be effective. And so I think like when you talk about personal brand being reputation, I've built a reputation for no matter what's going on in my world, you can expect me to show up. And I think like a lot of like, especially if you're early in your career, half the game is just showing up and being willing to be there and drive conversations forward and drive responsibilities forward, right? And so I think that's half the game. But like, I think back to how would I encourage an advisor to maybe like open the door to personal brand a little bit more is one, know that it's going to take time to get comfortable with that. It's not like an overnight thing where you're going to be talking about what's going on in your family on social media right away and feel really comfortable and artful about that. There is a little bit of an art to that. But opening the door
There
to that to just
definitely.
like, even posting the fun stuff going on in your world, like, take the opportunity maybe once a week or once a month just to think about flip through your camera reel and, like, was there something fun that happened that, like, if I was sitting in front of a client and they asked, "What's going on right now?" and I thought of the trip to Disney that we just took, I would say, "You know what? We just took an awesome trip to Disney, and it was great." We'll post about that on social media. There's nothing wrong with sharing that with the world. And so I would encourage folks just to like take baby steps and start to get comfortable that way. But like reputation is about being known, and you can't be known if you're hiding behind pre-scripted posts all the time.
Dude, yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's really it. And I like how you said it as it's a muscle too, because when you first do it, you feel like so incredibly awkward. You're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm cringing." And you realize like no one is caring as much as you are. And you find your voice as you go. You don't find your voice before you start like showing up.
For
That's what I've
sure.
seen.
For sure. I mean, one of the things that I'll often when I'm working with groups to train around social media or trust building or personal brand is we talk about like LinkedIn specifically. Think of it as a cocktail party or a happy hour. And think of it as a happy hour or cocktail party where like all of your best prospects, all of your best clients, all of your best COIs are hanging out. We can show up in one of a few ways to that cocktail party or that happy hour. We can show up as the wallflower, which is the same as like if you're opening LinkedIn and the most that you do is kind of like scroll through a few times, maybe toss a like on a couple people's posts. Like you're just know you're showing up to that happy hour, but you're standing in the corner and you're
You're
not having
hiding.
conversations and you might be like
Yeah.
nodding across the room to a few people, which is the equivalent of just like throwing a like on a post and moving on, right? You're
Mhm.
hiding. I think that's a great way to put it. The second way we can show up is we can show up and chuck business cards at everybody, and, like, nobody wants to be that advisor,
Cringe. Don't
right?
be that guy.
So we
Or
can just blast
yeah.
out messages, we can blast out copy paste cold DMs, we can blast out invitations to connect, and we can just, walk into that happy hour and be chucking business cards at everybody, and, like, you're gonna build a reputation. I don't know if it's one that you're gonna like, but you're gonna build a reputation.
Uh-huh.
The real way that we wanna show up is, like, in real life, we would show up to that party, and we'd want to be asking questions about, like, "Hey, how's your family?" Right? We hopped on. First thing we did before we press record, "Hey, how's your family?" Right? We connected on a personal
Being
level.
normal humans.
Right. "What's going on in your
Yeah.
business right now? What are you guys excited about in your business right now? Man, what are you just loving about the work that you're getting to do right now? Anything challenging going on? Anything I can be doing to help you?" Those are all things that we can say on LinkedIn as well,
Yes.
right? And those are all things that actually our best prospects, our clients, our COIs are saying on LinkedIn. When somebody posts, "Hey, we're hiring for this position right now." Well, like, don't just scroll past that post or drop a like on it. Think about if I were at that happy hour, at that cocktail party, and they said, "Hey, we're hiring for this role right now." What would you say in reply? Would you say, "That's so exciting.
Would
The
you
company must
literally
be
just be like
growing," right?
and not say anything? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Would you say, like, "Cool," and just walk away? Well, probably not. You'd engage in a conversation. So thinking about the posts that we see in our feed that way and responding to them as humans, as we would if somebody was saying that to us in real life, is actually even a better kind of baby step to take towards starting to post your own content that is real and human.
That is huge. Like, that's so helpful. Just when you just open your profile and you see it that way, like that, it's really easy to then show up authentically and translate, who you are as a person to how you show up on that platform or whatever other platform for that matter. Let's go back to trust building and like specifically for advisors, because you do work with a lot of advisors and other industry professionals, but you know the space well. What is the biggest mistake that you see advisors making when they're either trying to acquire clients or build relationships? What frustrates you? What's a big mistake that you're seeing?
Mm. That's a great question. I don't know if this is the biggest mistake, but it's kind of like connected to the conversation we've had so far today. But I think it's not slowing down enough to ask the next question, to really get to like the why behind the why, right? So, like, if someone is entertaining a conversation with you about working with you as their advisor, slowing down enough to say, what, not just what made you want to take the meeting today, but what made you want to take the meeting with me? Like, and I'll always joke, like, I'm not fishing for a compliment. I'm just legitimately curious, like, what made you want to, like, you're busy. We're both busy. We got a lot going on. Like, what made you want to slow down enough to have this conversation? And then however they reply, well, we're entertaining a shift from an advisor, or we're not really sure if what we're paying for right now is worth it, or retirement's on the horizon, whatever the answer is, slowing down enough to listen to that actively. So maybe repeat it back, rephrase it back to them, make sure you understand, and not from a tactical perspective. There is some science to that, right? But from a genuine, like, I want to make sure I understood you. So you said we're slowing down enough because you're concerned about retirement. Well, what's concerning about retirement for you? So not just blowing past that and saying, okay, cool, we're talking about retirement planning. Let me give you my red letter language pitch on why retirement income planning is important, but slowing down enough to say, what's exciting about retirement? And what would be important for you that an advisor would be able to do for you in your retirement? So, like, slowing down enough to ask those discovery questions in a way that's focused on building trust and building relationship.
Yeah. I feel like the word to that is just presence. That
Yeah.
takes a present person, like in their body, in their time, in the moment. What do you think stop? And that's a skill. Like we're not
For
naturally
sure.
that way. I am certainly not that way naturally. I have to fight to be that way and I have to work at it every day. What do you think keeps people you're working with or advisors from just being present to be able to, like, ask those questions?
I mean, you said it, right? It's distraction. So, like, if I'm sitting there the whole time and my phone's buzzing and I got a packed calendar and I have a to-do list that's longer than, the time that I have to get to it, then, like, naturally, I I'm not gonna be able to be present, or it's gonna be really hard for me to be present. So distraction is one. Second is pressure, right? Like, I've been in that seat before where we have
Right.
growth goals that we're trying to hit. We have income goals that we're trying to hit. Listen, I'm back to, like, starting a business getting a new business off the ground again.
You're
Like,
hustling.
I get it, right?
Yeah.
There's pressure there, and so I think it's that, but I think decide, and that's where that reframing is so important. We talked about it with parenting, but when I walk into that meeting, having some kind of process that I walk through, it can be a 30-second process, or maybe sometimes it needs to be a 10-minute process where I'm going to say, hey, all of those distractions, none of them matter right now. All that matters is be here, be present, right? My sister-in-law, her favorite phrase on the planet, she's a women's basketball coach up in Michigan, right? Tons of pressure. They won the Natty a few years ago. She's got a lot riding on her shoulders, managing a team of college students in today's world. I do not envy her, right? But her favorite expression is a scripture. It says, "Be where your feet are." And I think, like, whatever your process is to remind you that the best thing you could possibly do for your business, especially in a client meeting or in a prospect meeting, the best thing you could possibly do in your business is to be 100% there with that person. Frame that in your mind, whatever you need to do to walk into that meeting with that perspective.
And I think oftentimes we have this lie that it's like we're missing out on all these opportunities and
Yeah.
our brain just is somewhere else, but you're actually going to miss the one that's in front of you if you're not being present where your feet are. How do you maybe this could be our last structured question and then I wish we had more time, Kurt. I feel like we could literally go in like 20 tangents. Like I'm not hitting all the topics I
You
want to
and I
hit
can
with
fill
you.
time. There's no
Yeah.
fear about that.
We could talk about parenting,
Yeah.
business building, like or Christian faith. We could talk about it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what was my question? Okay. So let's end on this question and then we can go to lightning round. How like if you were an advisor today and you're building a business today, so maybe this is something you're going to talk about that you're doing, but our world really is so full of distraction and so noisy and it's engineered to kind of take our focus, right? So how do we combat all the distractions with AI, with goals, and how do we just sink into where our feet are and be present to the opportunity in front of us. Like, and if you were an advisor building a business today from scratch or in growth mode, what would you be practicing and what tactics would you be doing?
It's really good. Two things come to mind. I'll be quick. One is we have to be strategic with our time. So don't hear me saying just like flow into whatever's going on that day and experience it fully, right? Like I'm a big believer
Just a
in
butterfly.
you know what I mean? Like, I'm a big believer in have an ideal calendar. Be really intentional about how and where you're spending your time. Make sure that those activities align with your bigger picture goals. And then once that is set, then you've already done all the heavy lifting. Like now I know this is the work I need to be doing. So I'm going to be 100% here. And if I know that I've blocked time later that day or later in the week to work on email follow-ups or to work on creating proposals and plans or to work on phoning or whatever it might be, if I know that I already have that time set aside, then it's that much easier for me to focus on whatever is right in front of me, right? So that's number one is I think be really strategic with our time. The second is, I mean, I mentioned it already, but develop whatever that process is for you of reframing. Figure out what that is for yourself. So like for me, I mentioned earlier the trust equation from the book The Trusted Advisor. So the little like hack for me mentally when I was a new advisor is the trust equation is T equals C plus R plus I divided by SL. Trust is a function of credibility, reliability, and intimacy divided by self-orientation. And I knew that the best thing I could do in an introduction meeting was just focus on building trust, building relationship. And so I would take out at the time, we used paper fact finders. I still like taking my notes on paper. I'm old now, apparently. But I would write the trust equation on the top of that notes page before I left for that meeting as I was, thinking about who I was meeting, making sure I had all the stuff that I wanted to bring to that meeting. I would just write that trust equation at the top of the page. And that was my simple, just like reframe for myself to say, this meeting is about building trust. And the reality is, every exchange we have with another human should be about building trust. And the beautiful part of that trust equation is that really what it's saying is, hey, remember, it's about them and not about you. That if you want to build trust, be more curious about who they are and what's important to them than you are about your own agenda. And
Period.
magically, your own agenda is going to surface itself
It always
because
that's
by
like a
caring
law of
about
the
them, they care
universe.
about you, right? It's
Yes.
the law of reciprocity.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. All right, let's do some quick lightning round.
Let's do it.
This is where I get to know my guests more and it's really just like fun for me.
I love it.
Okay. What is the best piece of advice you ever ignored?
The best piece wow, lightning round, and I gotta think about that one. I don't know what comes to mind. Well, okay, so on that podcast that you mentioned that we recorded here with
Yeah.
my buddies, he asked an incredible question, which is funny because he's in the room right behind this camera. But he said, "What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?" And I alluded to this earlier, but what has really surfaced for me is I have plenty to learn. I have something to give, and I have nothing to prove.
Ooh,
And I think if we can all walk into rooms with that presence about us, we're going to walk in with a ton of humility and a ton of just like being comfortable in our own skin. And so I think, especially early in my career, I focused way too much on trying to prove something. And I should have focused on trying to learn something and trying to just be of service.
I'm thinking about the LinkedIn cocktail party analogy. If you can show up like with that mindset,
Yeah.
that's really good. I love
Yeah.
that. I'm going to write that down. What's a tool you can't live without?
Gosh, I mean, business related, LinkedIn, 1000%.
Yeah.
I keep up with friends and business relationships on LinkedIn. It's a huge source of new relationships, new revenue for me. And it's become just a place where I go to have community, to be in community with other business leaders.
It's really good. What are you loving most about parenting right now?
Oh gosh. You're gonna make me cry talking about this because my son's about to turn 4 in like a week.
Oh,
And man, I just love like they're at ages now where everything is new, but they can actually like wrap their heads around it. You know what I mean? And
light
so,
bulbs are going off.
my gosh, just watching them, learn and be exposed to real life and to cool things and exciting things and hard things, but watching them really like interact with the world and the people around them is just really beautiful right now.
My son just turned 3 in the beginning of April, and that, like, hit me harder than any other birthday.
Right? Three's hard too. Forget terrible
Oh,
twos.
dude.
Three-nager was hard, is hard.
People told me this, and I'm like, "Okay, that's" but I swear the moment he turned 3, it was like, "Okay,
2
I get
2
it."
was a cakewalk
2 was a
for us, but
breeze.
three's been a beautiful challenge.
Yes, that is. What is, leadership or entrepreneurship advice that you don't subscribe to?
I think as we're talking about being present and just like being where you are, I think like as salespeople, we feel like we have to be everywhere and we have to be everything to everyone. And I just don't think that's true. Like you can say, that's just not my thing and that's just not for me, and choose what and who you say yes to. And that's not rude and that's not going to damage your business, but you have the power to choose how you're going to build your business and who you're going to work with and what rooms you're going to be in. And so choose that proactively.
Goes back to everything we talked about, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then last question, who is someone else that I should have on the show?
Do you know Dave Resigi?
I don't.
Dave's awesome. So Dave was one of my first clients as a marketing consultancy, former NM and Mass Mutual guy, built an incredible business effectively as a fractional chief development officer. I don't know that he would frame him or his business that way, but I tell you what's really cool about David is you want to talk about like art and science of sales. That man is a master. He has incredible relationships. I have experienced nothing from him but relationships over transaction,
Yeah.
and yet he knows the science behind building and scaling a wealth management practice better than anybody I know.
Okay, amazing. I'll go find him and connect with
Dave's
him.
great. You'll love Dave. I'm happy to make.
Awesome. Well, Kurt, I'm sad our time is coming to an end now. You and I will have to schedule another catch up, but everyone listening, go connect with Kurt on LinkedIn, send him a thank you for being on today, and make sure you keep up with him and his coaching. And just really appreciate your time, Kurt. This was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on, Emily. I love everything that you're doing. Keep leaning into it. You're doing an awesome job showing up as totally who you are, 100% mama and 100% entrepreneur. And I think the world needs more of that. So keep doing
Thank you. I feel seen. Thank you.
it.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show. If this conversation resonated with you or you learned something new, make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. And do me a favor, like and subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Comment on anything that you want to see or hear more of in the future as well. You can also stay connected by subscribing to the Wonder Weekly newsletter and connect with me, Emily, on LinkedIn at Emily Armstrong or Instagram, Emily Armstrong 2.0 for more insights on building modern client service firms. Until next time, keep on adapting, modernizing, and growing beyond referrals.